Welcome back to another episode of the podcast From the Depths of Darkness to the Light of Success. I'm your host, Chris Swick. This podcast is all about mental health, addictions, and just trying to break the stigma around anything anyone's afraid to talk about. You can go follow the show over on Instagram at Depths of Darkside, or go follow the show and hit the follow button on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, wherever the hell you can find your podcast. You'll find me there. Now, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce the next guest, Hillary Schroeder, who lives in Guelph, Ontario now, and I've met her through recovery, and she's an awesome friend. So I want to take it away and let them know a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name's Hillary. I am 31. I live in Guelph, Ontario. I am currently in school for mental health and addictions, but that's not where my story starts right now. My story starts probably back in my early 20s when I found myself starting to develop my own substance dependency and addictions. You know, I've overcome a lot. I've persevered through some really hard stuff. But I think like my story is unique, just like everybody else's. I really didn't know what was going on with me when I started to develop dependency. I believe that anybody who is spiritually broken is vulnerable to an addiction. And addictions come in all kinds of shapes and forms. Mine was to heroin. And I think I also had an addiction to chaos and drama and dysfunction in my life.
And what brought you down that path to being dependent on drugs to bury those feelings and stuff like that, Hillary? What was it that brought you down? Was there some past trauma from earlier on in your life?
I ended up in a relationship with somebody who had about 20 years of addiction history between alcohol and opiates, anything basically. And at that point in time, I all about trying to help people, right? Like I was just so desperate and I didn't love myself. I thought I wanted a family. I wanted a normal life. As they say, you grow up, you go to school, you get a job, you meet someone, you have kids. Like it's just the typical life was drilled into my mindset. Not saying that was from parental figures necessarily, but like just from society teaches us that that's what normal life is. And being so young, going to theater school, just being so lost. I think when I finished and not really knowing what I wanted to do, I met this guy and I put everything I had into trying to make him better, see that life could be good and happy and we could have a family. And it didn't take long. I got pregnant and he actually proposed to me a month before I got pregnant. And this was all in the span of 6 months. We lived together on an island for a few months. He wasn't using like he had been drinking. He got caught and I tried to help him. And so throughout the rest of the summer, he had stopped drinking while we were on the job and working at this fishing lodge. So by the time we came out a couple months later, I thought he was good. Things were fine. I came down like back to Southern Ontario. He moved down here with me. I got a good job and he got a job a little while later, like after I got pregnant, but it wasn't long. It was literally right around when I got pregnant that he showed up at my work to pick me up and I smelled booze on him. And I can remember the feeling in my stomach just being like, oh, I thought this was okay. Like we were going to be okay. Like this wasn't going to be a problem. Like he would want to be with me and he wouldn't want to use drugs and drink. And oh my God, like I was freaking out. And this battle went on for a few years. I ended up having another child. But at this point, my relationship with my parents had become so strained. All the support that I had in my life was really just on the rocks. I couldn't figure out who to make happy, my family or my kid's dad or what was going to make me happy. I just wanted to have the picture perfect family. And I had postpartum depression after my daughter was born. And she was like, both my children were premature, related to stress more than likely. I was sick my entire pregnancies. Like it was supposed to be joyous, right? Like it's all I'd wanted to be was a mom and everything was just like not going how I in my head imagined things were supposed to be in life. And I ended up doing a line of something after my daughter was born, within a week after she was born. And I got my taste. And at that point, I believe I was completely spiritually broken. I had fought for years to try and get my kid's dad to sober up. And obviously, I was failing at that. And everyone likes to say that I capitulated. If you can't beat them, join them. And I believe that is truly what happened to me. But it wasn't like, oh, like, I don't blame him. I definitely don't blame him. I'm not like, he's the one that introduced me to substances. No, I was vulnerable. Like, I was broken and I was depressed, and then things got really rocky after that. We took off after my daughter was born. About a few weeks after she was born, we took off 12 hours away from here and moved the four of us up
With your
to
kids?
he's from and his family. Yeah. So we took the kids and because at this point, nobody knew that there was anything going on. No one really knew that Jesse, like my kid's dad, was drinking. And no one knew that I had started doing anything. But my parents were onto something. Like, they were like, why isn't he working? And it was just constantly lies and excuses. And they were catching on. And so, fight or flight, we flew. Like, we took right off, took the kids, moved up to Chapleau. And this place is where he was from. And he's vulnerable. He's already back into his dependency. I'm starting to get a taste. And he catches up with all of his old friends that he knew when he used to live there. And right away it started getting hydromorphine. So it started with prescription pills, and that was like a few months of that. He was drinking consistently too. I really never really drank. Every once in a while I would, but something about the opiates just caught me. That's what my brain and my brain liked. And it just went on, right? Like, it went on, and I came back down with the kids. He stayed up there. Was clean for a while for the summer while he was gone. Then he finally came back down, and it didn't take long for him to find somebody down here. And shit is a whole lot cheaper down here than it is up there. So things got a whole lot worse.
And going through that with him, like when he came back down, did you take him back right away, or was it just sort of he showed up at your doorstep?
No, I'd been fighting with him to come down and to get out of there, to get clean, because I was worried he was gonna die, and I thought that coming down here, he'd be safer. I was doing well, which meant that I thought I was gonna be solid for him when he got down here, and he had lied to me. Like, he came down to he said he was coming down to coming back in the summer. He shows up with a bag, and I was like, "Where's all your stuff?" I'm not really coming back. Like, he didn't wanna leave his job, it was really good paying. Unfortunately, now I do recognize that he did have a really stable, good paying job there, and that could have set him up for success, and I was not meeting him where he was at, maybe, or just not understanding the grips of the addiction that both of us were in, and then what you need to get recovery. I thought it was like, you just need someone to love you. No, you need support, you need guidance, and you need to start having things in life that are normal, like a job, like a place to live.
Yeah, and so take us along that road because you've, been through your ups and downs, like you've said, and through sharing your story and stuff on social media. So that's where your sort of addiction started was in your 20s. You didn't really get into it. Nothing really had happened to you before then through trauma from your childhood or anything, eh?
No, I moved a lot as a child, and I think it's not severe trauma that I went through. I was a different kid. I needed different kind of support. And I believe that education and awareness of how to approach kids that are different the way I wasn't understood back then. And so I have to understand where my family was at the time and where society was at the time. I don't know. I feel like I had this preconceived notion of what life was supposed to be like, but then there was also this part of me. I can remember this part of me of watching shows like Intervention, or when I learned about drugs, like when I learned about heroin, I was pretty young. I don't know why I was so young when I learned about it. Probably some show, and then my parents explaining something to me, and there being this morbid curiosity. This is so bad, but obviously there's some reason that people do it. I want to try it. And But, that also they teach you the kids that come from broken families and live in rough areas and skip school and get bad grades, they're all the ones that are addicts. That was the idea in my head. I hate using that language. But I had this idea when blue. Sorry. I had this idea when I was a kid that I don't even know what I was saying. Shit.
You had the idea that you were a kid, like, sorta like when the people were like
Oh, okay. I didn't have a broken family. Like I had two parents that were together, I had a nice home, all the right things. Like my family was a picture perfect family. So I didn't think that I was vulnerable to addiction. If I did anything, I didn't come from a home like that. So if I tried anything, I thought I was safe. Like I wasn't gonna end up down that road. I didn't understand it.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying, Hillary, too. I didn't come from that broken home or any of that stuff as well. It was just something that had happened to me in my early years through a family friend, and that's sort of what set it off because I was afraid to talk about these things back then. It wasn't something that you talked about in a sense. You kept your feelings to yourself. That's what I was taught in a sense. But today I know that it's not good to, bury things down inside because it doesn't usually go.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't. And I know I have trauma from sexual assaults and encounters and stuff as a teenager. I've been starting to process all that stuff and understand it. I've gotten to a place now where I'm very comfortable being alone, which is really good for me. But I was so used to this chaos and drama. Hey, stop it. I I was I was used to chaos and comfortable in the drama and the my life is crazy. Look at me, feel sorry for me. There got to be a point where in my addiction where I was feel sorry for me and wanted some sort of attention. I don't know. I still haven't quite figured all that out. I just know that when I got away from my kid's dad and then was trying to get clean and then all these supports that family services that got involved and everything just went horrible. Everything just went so to shit at that point because, like, I thought I used to think it was a lot of time it was me just being like a rebel. Oh, as soon as you're telling me what to do. No, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna put my back up. I thought that was just my personality. But the more I've come to understand stuff in school is that when you rob somebody of their self-autonomy, and the natural human reaction is to have resistance, is to resist that. And so when I thought I was doing well in my recovery and I was on the right path, I'd gotten on methadone. So I was on harm reduction by the time I left my kid's dad. I hadn't been using street drugs. At that point, I'd gotten into heroin. So I had started smoking and snorting heroin with my kid's dad, got on methadone, and then yeah, so then I left him, and then everybody around me is, "Well, if you want your kids and you have to get off methadone." Like, I wasn't actually clean. So I came off methadone twice in 1 year, and it is absolute hell. I can't even describe to you how sick I was, and I had no skills acquired at that point. I hadn't found Narcotics Anonymous. I hadn't found social support. I was just being told that this is what I had to do in order to achieve what I wanted, and, like, I was just trying to
And
make
who was telling you these things?
family service. It was and then no one really offered me support that was, like, appropriate for me. It was just, "Oh, whatever we can get for Hillary, she's gonna get." And so I ended up getting into this program that was for integrated mood and anxiety. Mind you, had just been doing heroin all summer and I was back on methadone and they throw me into to rehab for an integrated mood and anxiety program. And I lasted about 2 weeks and the time I was there, I found NA, right? Like I went to my first NA meeting. I started to get support, but I still was lost in my way. The person that introduced me was an IV user. So I was, oh, let's go to meetings. But then he's in another program at the rehab. He goes home on the weekend, comes back and he's high and he starts glorifying IV drug use and my mind's spiraling because I'm hurt and sad that my friend has gone unused. I'm like, why is it that everybody who's using drugs just keeps going back out? That's gonna be me. That's gonna be me. And I set myself up and I left Homewood one day and I walked from Homewood to downtown and I found somebody that I knew and I had them shoot me up for the first time. So that's what I did while I was in rehab because I wasn't there for the right thing. I wasn't being treated for what I needed to be treated for at the time. And I was being forced to do things that, like, I had misdiagnoses for mental health disorders. Everything was a mess because my symptoms of withdrawal and like from my substance use were mimicking mental health stuff. And so no one could figure out what was going on with me. But so that was in October of 2018. And I went home 2.5 weeks after I started that program, didn't finish it, kept going to 12-step groups when I got out, but I had gotten to do something that I had never thought I was ever gonna do in my life, but somehow I got it in my head that I should try it. That morbid curiosity kicked back in, and I had no education, right? I had no education around IV drug use. I was on my own at this point. I lived out in the country, so I would get a bag of stuff from the safe supply site or the harm reduction place that hands out clean supplies, sorry. And I spent 3 months shooting up drugs with no awareness of what I was doing to myself, and I got arrested. I got arrested in January. I was really sick. I thought I was having some bad withdrawals. So I'd come to Guelph and I'd gotten some drugs, did them in the car, and somebody came and found me in the car, nodded out, and called the cops. So I got arrested and I was really sick. I've looked back in like the write out from my like arrest and it's like Hillary was saying that she was not feeling well. Hillary threw up. Like I had a fever. They took me to do my tox screen at the hospital. My blood pressure was fucked up. My heart rate was all messed up and really high. And the doctor said, "Oh, she's probably fighting an infection." And I was very cordial. Like they treated me really well when I got arrested. They were very nice to me. I was just sick though. Like I couldn't even put up a fight because I was so sick. I got let out in the evening at 11:30. I walked from downtown Guelph to like the South End basically to try and get some more drugs before heading my way back up to Fergus. And 4 days later, I couldn't walk. Like I couldn't walk. I suddenly had like spots all over my hands. Nothing was like, no matter what I did, nothing was making me feel better. And my parents called an ambulance and I was septic and I was extremely sick. I had bacterial endocarditis in my heart. Um, and that was from shooting drugs. My lack of knowledge and aware like, I thought the only thing you didn't have to do was share needles. I was safe if I didn't share my needles, but did I really understand about, like, reusing needles, like my own? No. Like, I didn't. And I feel very silly and naive because I think I'm a very smart person, but at that time, holy crap, I had absolutely no idea what endocarditis was, and then I was giving it to myself,
What
right?
is it for the people that are listening that don't know?
So endocarditis is it's a bacterial infection. You can get it like on like it can start to vegetate on your spine and cause paralysis. So mine vegetated on my heart and had vegetated so much that part of my heart and my valves started to break off and my heart started to pump those pieces of my heart all over my body. So I had one of them go up to my brain and give me a stroke. We don't know exactly when it happened. It was found in an MRI. And I had pulmonary embolisms fill my lungs up. So I went into congestive heart failure. And yeah, I'd started to be okay before the congestive heart failure started. I was like, my doctor had come to see me in the hospital and I was doing all right. And then suddenly I crashed. I couldn't breathe. My back hurt so bad. My back hurt so bad. And I could remember all of a sudden there just being like, so many nurses, they got X-ray to come up to the room. They couldn't even move me. They had X-ray come take a chest X-ray in my room. My lungs were completely full. Out in the hallway, my parents saw the X-ray over someone's shoulder and he was like, my doctor turned around and just looked at them and was like, "We need to get her the fluid out of her now, or we need to get her to St. Mary's for heart surgery immediately." I was and I could looked at my dad and I could just remember all the chaos, right? Like the absolute beeping and just being in so much pain and being like, I don't want to be in pain because I was going through withdrawals too. And they were giving me morphine for pain, but nothing. I'd been doing fentanyl. So, like, nothing was touching the pain. And I looked at my dad, I grabbed his hand and I looked up at him and I said, I don't want to die. I couldn't believe that I landed myself where I did. Like, how did I do this to myself? Like, how did this happen so fast? Like, I see in people do drugs and IV drugs for years and years, and I've never heard of this. How did this happen to me in 3 months? Is
That's
pretty
crazy.
scary.
No, that would be very scary. I haven't been down that road. I was not an IV drug user myself, but I have many friends that were and, some that aren't lucky enough to make it. But I'm truly grateful that you're here today to share your story and shed some light on it, Hillary. That was very powerful what you just said.
Thank you.
No problem, no problem. Along those lines, you got through all that, you had open heart surgery, and now what made you tick that, "Oh, I wanna go to school to deal with mental health and addictions people and stuff like that?" Was it just a passion of yours after you got cleaned up that you really wanted to do that?
Yeah, so I just wanna say I ended up having laparoscopic heart surgery. I had an amazing heart surgeon who was, like, determined to not replace my valves, but fix both of them so that I wouldn't have to have multiple surgeries in the future, or I wouldn't have to be blood on blood thinners for the rest of my life. I was to be prepared to wake up having open heart being done, but he pulled it off, and I've got 2 small scars and a ticker that's got 2 repaired valves, and it's working great. So I'm forever grateful for my wonderful surgeon over in Kitchener. But I've always wanted to help people. So, like, actually, when I met my kid's dad, I had just finished theater school and I had this weird draw to him to fix him and then I'd also had this weird curiosity around substances and addiction, right? Like I said, there was that morbid curiosity there, but also I didn't understand it, right? I couldn't understand how people could end up there and be so like watching shows like Intervention messed me up, I think. But I didn't end up I looked into going to school back then. It just didn't happen, which is all meant to be because I ended up going down my own road of addiction and experiencing it myself. And today I just finished my first year of college for mental health and addictions. And it last summer, I had all this time and I was starting to get my life back on track. I'd had about 6 months clean and I was just ready to do something. My doctor had been weird about me going back to work. She didn't think it would be good for my recovery to be focused on anything like that, but I could volunteer. I was just like, I am going to school. Like COVID is happening. And what else is there really to do? I've been thinking about this for so long since the moment I came into recovery myself. I wanted to share, I wanted to be a speaker, I wanted to help others. And yeah, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I have a really good understanding of it, I think. And I think this is something that I should do. So I applied for school and I got in. And yeah, I have experienced something absolutely wonderful over the last 8 months, and that is finding my calling. I believe that this is something that I am meant to do. I get great joy out of helping others. Like I because I get it. I understand it, but not only do I understand individuals, I understand society, right? Like I understand how systems and agencies and stuff that are can be helpful, but in the wrong way, they can totally undermine somebody's recovery. And we are coming a really long way in education right now and awareness on how to help people, like how to better approach people suffering from mental health and substance use issues. We're changing the language. I really need to get out.
You're on that topic of mental health, Hillary. What is a one way you can suggest to people out there now going to school for your first year how to help someone that is dealing with mental health, either an illness or problems in their life? What's the best way to approach someone that is dealing with it or offer them support?
listen. I think listening and having empathy and understanding and never telling somebody what to do, right? Try to guide them to come to the decision on their own. Because there's a lot of power in that for an individual when, hey, I made this decision. Nobody else told me I needed to, no one told me I had to do this. People talked to me about it, and I've been able to come to the decision on my own. And patience, it takes a lot of patience. And I think recognizing for me, like I started to excel in my recovery the moment I had my own place. I had a safe place to lay my head at night. I wasn't constantly, oh, shit hits the fan. Am I going back to the shelter? I'd lived in the shelter for a few months at that point when I got my place. But while I lived out in the shelter and on the streets, like I stayed clean. I knew it was for me and only for me. And it was weird. It was really weird for me that the second that I had nobody telling me what I had to do, and all of a sudden I'm in a place where I got no responsibilities. I'm living downtown at the shelter, like, I could go do whatever the fuck I want right now, no one's gonna care. No one's gonna know, no one's gonna see me. I can do this, but I didn't. Like, it was bizarre, and I believe now that it's just because I wanted to be clean, but I needed to figure out what was best for me. And everyone's saying, "You got a nice place to live. You're with your kids here." I love my parents so much. Like they've given me so much support and help through all of this. But I felt like I was like I felt I had no independence. I had no autonomy. I felt like I was constantly being watched and ridiculed and judged. And it just wasn't helping. And when I no longer had that and it was just me looking out for me and my independence and feeling like I can do this, I'm capable, I'm gonna get there. Like a lot came from that. But
Very
you just
powerful and true. It's like when you feel that independence, when you don't have independence and you feel like someone's watching over you or watching your every move or whatnot. I've felt the same way you have as well. But once you get out on your own and prove to yourself that you can do it, just keep it going and having that routine of doing it on your own, it feels so good and you feel like you've accomplished something too, which you should be very proud of yourself for doing.
I think one of the hardest things for somebody who's become addicted addicted to substances and is it becomes familiar, right? That's what's familiar, that's the life that is most comfortable. And there's so much fear and change. And am I capable of this? Can I live clean and sober? Will I have any fun? I don't like my problem was is I didn't think I was gonna amount to anything as a clean and sober person. So I didn't have faith in myself. I didn't believe that I could achieve anything. Like this was the hands that was dealt to me and I guess I just have to live it. But that's not true. We all, given the right support, given the right knowledge and understanding and self-awareness, I think someone is capable of achieving anything they really want to.
It's so true. I didn't think I would amount to anything either. Like for the longest time, I didn't think you could have fun, clean and sober. But boy, I can tell you that is fucking bullshit. I have just as much fun, if not more fun, clean and sober now. I'm still the same human I was when I was addicted to crack cocaine or whatever it was that I was using, but I don't have the substance to do alongside it anymore. I just do it without it, and it's much more enjoyable because I remember it. I remember what I've done. I don't have to worry about putting the puzzle together the next morning of the chaos that I've caused the day before.
When do you remember, like, at the beginning too, it's like experiencing life for the first time. I had never done well at stuff or felt I wanted to be a mom so bad. And when I had my kids, my kids were cared for. They weren't neglected. I wasn't the best mom, that's for sure. But today, when I spend time with them, like it's just so much more enjoyable. It's so easy. I've often talked about how much I wanted to spend time with my kids, but my body was so physically sick so much of the time that like I couldn't, right? No matter how much I wanted to, I just couldn't pick myself up. Everything in my body hurt. And when this year I've spent a lot of time just like, I live in subsidized housing. It's not ideal, but it's where I'm at right now. And that's okay. And I was very like, so last year I was really like, I'm so mad about where I'm still at. Like I'm living in like the ghetto and I was really hard on myself and where I was at in my life and in society. Like I felt like I still wasn't a good functioning member of society and that I really didn't have much to be proud of. But I had to change my thinking and also just stop looking for other things outside of myself to make my problems like go away. Like when it comes to getting my kids back, I thought what I needed was to be with somebody who could help provide for me and my kids. And not, I didn't want to like work or be lazy, but I just didn't think if even if I was working a full time job on my own, I didn't think I was going to be able to get my kids back or be a mom because everyone always says single moms, like, life is so hard. You're not gonna make it, Hillary. Like, how are you gonna do that as a single mom? How are you? How you? How you? Like, I can do it, but people put it in my head that I should doubt myself. So I had it believing that I needed to have all these other things. If I got all this other stuff, then I could get what I want back in my life. And so that was a year ago. And I've really recognized that only I can achieve these things. And I'm capable of that. As a single mom, can probably provide to my kids way better of a life than if I was with somebody who could maybe like financially help me a little bit better with my kids. I know that sounds horrible to say, but it's true though. That's how we look at life.
Oh,
That's
you're
how we end up
speaking from the
in stuff that we don't want to be in because if we don't have this or we don't have this other person in our lives and our support, I'm gonna fail. I'm not gonna make it. I need them. I can't do this on my own. I had to recognize I can do this on my own.
I love that you say that's amazing. It's you gotta learn to love yourself and learn to live life on your own before you can bring someone else into your life again thing. Learn to take care of yourself, then you can learn to take care of your kids and learn to support others and stuff like that. But it all starts with you.
Yeah. And I, this year in school, I've gotten to really share my experiences and the stuff that I've gone through with my peers and my teachers and just be told that I'm definitely going to do some big things with the career, whatever career I take. And that's going to be the hard part, right? Like I've recently just been considering stuff about like getting into a position with policy, which means more school, but that's okay to be told, "Oh, Hillary, it doesn't come down to whether or not you're capable of it. It just comes down to whether or not you want to do it yeah, by someone who was teaching me. I felt very inspired and it sets into this, ooh, now I have all these other ideas of what could I do? But I know that want to aim in prevention, right? Like going back to the endocarditis and the absolute no education I had around other infections that can happen because in my drug awareness as a child and as a teenager, it was all your brain fried on eggs. But it was like, it was HIV was all rampant in the education and sharing needles, and that's how you'll get sick and you'll get this lifelong illness. That's all that really stuck in my brain from my education. And they've got to change that. They need to start making some changes to some education. And I was over the moon excited to see some of the stuff that they were teaching us in school about prevention methods today and education. And it's not being like, hey kids, just don't do drugs, they're bad. It's let's have a conversation about what substances are and why people might end up using drugs and why people end up dependent. Not just you pick up drugs, you're going to be an addict. Like it was so misconstrued in the 90s.
No, for sure. And I'm glad there's this awareness being brought out today about it because it does, because there's so many systems that are broken here in Ontario, I feel, that need to be fixed. And they're slowly fixing them with the harm reduction sites and the safe usage sites and stuff like that. It's nice to see those popping up, but there needs to be a lot more work done too, I feel. It goes back to not shaming all these people because we're all humans at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what walk of life you come from. We both came from great homes, but both ended up addicts. It doesn't mean we're bad people though. So that's another thing I'd like to say as well.
That's just it. Our those decisions and that I don't even like using the word addict anymore. That's really changing. They really try not to use that at school because it's stigmatizing. So even though I know I self-identify as an addict and that is something that helps me in my recovery, but I have to recognize that I should never say that somebody else is an addict or refer to them as an addict unless they have identified themselves as one, just because it is so stigmatizing. And but yeah, like the knowledge is really changing, and I'm grateful for everything that I'm learning. And yeah, I believe that I can make some big changes, but it's all about we I think that anybody asking for help deserves help. And I've gotten into disputes at school about fighting about people who have done criminal acts or whatever. And I was saying that if they walk in my door, like as if I'm a counselor and they walk through my door, I don't care what you've done. I don't care. You know, I've got my own traumas. Things might come up. I've got fears around inferior men, but I can put all that aside because I recognize that so many people end up in a place they're like, I've done all this stuff. I can't believe I'm doing like I've done this and this is who I've become. How am I supposed to ask for help? Like, how am I supposed to admit that this is the stuff that I've done? And that's what deters people from asking for help is they're so ashamed and they're so yeah, like I just have to stay open-minded and care.
I like that you say it just like that, being open-minded
Empathy
and
goes a long
caring. Yeah, it does go a long way. Being empathetic and showing that you care to someone. That's all they want sometimes, or a listening ear, like you said earlier and stuff like that. But before we go today, Hillary, what are 3 things that you do for your mental health on a daily just to keep yourself grounded and
So on the daily, I go to 12-step meetings 6 times a week. That is just something that's really good for my recovery, the connection, being able to help newcomers. And I truly believe the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. That was something else that I had learned in school at one point this year. And it's so true. I need to stay connected with others, but most of all, I need to stay connected with other people in recovery because they call me on my crap. They, I can go and talk stuff out. And they don't let me, my friends don't let me get stuck in my problems. We're all solution focused and we're not pity party. Let's make a big mountain out of a molehill. Let's just look at what's going on right now, feel it out. You're allowed to have these feelings. Don't get stuck and don't go down the rabbit hole, which can so happen. It can easily happen. We're human beings and life happens. Life is just as hard in recovery, if not harder, than it was when I was using. And I walk on a consistent basis. I have giant dog that I got him as an emotional support animal. He does not calm me down, but gave me so much structure and routine to my life. I was someone who had a hard time getting out of bed and had depression, and I have no choice. But when my kids aren't here, I still got to get out of bed because I got to walk the dog. And that gets me out of bed in the morning sometimes. There's never a day where I'm not getting up because I have to get up. I have responsibilities, and as much as that's a commitment, it is a self-care thing for me because he's given me so much structure. And yeah, the third thing is I stay in connection with like my best friend who's also in recovery. We talk out our stuff on the daily, which is so important for me. And then checking in on newcomers. But I've really improved my place. Like I was saying, this is my right now. And a lot of my self care over the last 8 months was taking some money because I haven't really had any financial freedom for a long time until now. Investing in stuff for my home, getting a new couch, a new coffee table, and making it a nice home. And I love my little place right now. It's like my little condo, but I live in a pretty like old apartment building, but I've made the best of it. And it's because I put effort into it and it makes me feel better.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share your story. I got so much out of it. It is very powerful and empowering what you had to say, and I hope others got something out of it as well today. So again, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Hillary. You're welcome. You have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Chris.